What's up everyone and welcome back to the MMA Zone. Today, let's get started with Sean O'Malley reveals plan after UFC 292. On Saturday night, streaking contender Sugar Sean O'Malley will look to capture UFC gold when he squares off against Aljamain Sterling. The bout will be O'Malley's first since his controversial UFC 280 win over Peter Yan, which saw him step into the #1 contender spot back in October. During his time off, O'Malley has continued to set his sights on bringing an end to the Funkmaster's reign, as Sterling eyes a jump up to the featherweight division. With Sugar Sean's longtime rival, Marlon Chito Vera, also set to compete on Saturday's UFC 292 card, O'Malley couldn't help but consider the possibility of the two competing in a highly anticipated rematch later this year, this time for UFC gold. On a recent episode of the Timbo Sugar Show, the #1 contender spoke about his desire to remain active after the fight following such a long layoff.
Who knows, he could be preparing for another battle.
Ideally, like I said, I want to stay active, baby. Let's get me back in there December. Let's go fucking run it up.
Smoke will come get it.
What's your problem with Smoke, man?
No, I don't know. It came to mind.
No, it was funny that we had that. That was so fucking funny. You're silly, man. You're silly.
No, I'm sure he's a cool kid.
But realistically, Corey's out.
Someone asked me that. They're like, what about Corey?
Henry's out. Price still with his fucking shoulder. If Cheeto wins, me versus Cheeto in December.
Let's pray, dude.
Book
Pray
it.
to the gods.
Book it. I'm ready to book it right now. I'll sign a contract.
Although he and the champ have a bet going into the fight that the first person to shoot has to pay $100, O'Malley's coach is confident that Aljamain Sterling won't waste any time in trying to secure a takedown. On a recent episode of Submission Radio, he discussed a prediction he made that O'Malley could wind up knocking the champion out.
Aljo is such a good athlete. He's so funky that he's going to take risks and he's going to try to grab Sean. He's going to take a big risk. And that's also going to be able to open up the knockout for us. Like I said, Sean can knock people out with every one of his limbs. So if he lunges in at the wrong time, and he could get some knuckles bounced off his chin, and it could be the end of the night.
With Fight Night rapidly approaching, how do you think things will play out in Boston? Drop your predictions in the comments section down below. Dana White reacts to Mark Zuckerberg UFC fight. As talks for a fight between Elon Musk and Mark Zuckerberg remain at a standstill, it sounds as though the Meta CEO is ready to move on from the potential bout. In his recent post on Threads, Zuckerberg indicated that he was setting his sights on competing against people who, quote, take the sport seriously. While the assumption among fans was that Zuckerberg would go back to competing in jiu-jitsu, it sounds as though he and UFC President Dana White could be working behind the scenes to negotiate a fight for him in the UFC. UFC President Dana White, who spoke to TMZ, was quoted as saying, "I have said since day one, Mark is a very serious guy. He loves the sport and is training hard. I believe he is serious about fighting in the UFC." As Dana White has shown in the past with CM Punk signing, he's willing to entertain ideas out of the ordinary. Given that, only time will tell whether we ever see Zuckerberg compete in the UFC. Michael Chandler furious with Logan Paul versus Dillon Danis fight. When it was announced that Conor McGregor's friend and training partner Dillon Danis would be competing against Logan Paul in a boxing match, many immediately questioned whether or not the former Team McGregor jiu-jitsu coach would in fact follow through with the bout given his recent withdrawal from a bout against KSI. After Danis withdrew from the previously scheduled bout at the 11th hour, Iron Michael Chandler isn't ready to entertain the idea of the controversial grappler competing in combat sports again. While speaking in a video for his YouTube channel, Chandler ripped the fight, questioning why the combat sports community as a whole has not shunned Danis for his online antics.
Ticks me off for a couple different reasons. Number one, Logan, I get it. You're not exactly going the professional boxing route like Jake is, but to fight this guy, who I don't even want to name anymore because I feel like he's just been a troll and we keep giving him attention. We keep encouraging him with likes and tweets and headlines and fights like this. Why are we doing this? Why do we keep doing this?
At the same time, Logan Paul has been battling it out online with Danis, who has repeatedly taken shots at Paul's wife. After the eldest Paul brother challenged McGregor to put his money where his mouth is and put $1 million on a Danis win, Paul claimed that the Irish star went radio silent, tweeting, "24 hours later and Conor's gone radio silent. You see how much confidence your daddy has in you?" With the bout set for October 14th, do you think Danis will end up withdrawing from the fight? Drop your thoughts in the comment section below. UFC fighter could break Khamzat Chimaev record. Leading up to UFC 292, it was announced that former bantamweight champion Cody Garbrandt had been forced out of his scheduled bout against Mario Bautista. Although his withdrawal put the UFC in a tough spot, given that the event was right around the corner, they found a replacement opponent in Damon Blackshear, who will be competing just 1 week after his twister win over Jose Johnson. The feat would tie him with Lupi Godinez for the quickest turnaround between fights in the modern era at 7 days, and could see him break a record held by Khamzat Chimaev for shortest time between wins. Currently, Chimaev holds the modern-day record with 10 days between his UFC debut win over John Phillips on Fight Island on July 16, 2020, and his TKO victory over Reese McKee on Fight Island just 10 days later on July 26, 2020. Godinez previously attempted to break the record by winning 2 fights just 1 week apart. However, she came up short of securing a victory in her second fight. With a chance to etch his name in UFC history, it's safe to say that the MMA community will be eager to see how things play out for Damon Blackshear. Before we continue, make sure you give that like button some love, and be sure to subscribe to the MMA Zone for all of the latest news. UFC fight updates. This week has been a busy one for the UFC, in addition to the previously mentioned update about Damon Blackshear replacing Cody Garbrandt. Before jumping into a newly reported bout and another fight update, let's take a look at Sugar Sean O'Malley's reaction to Cody Garbrandt's UFC 292 withdrawal given the previous bad blood between these two. He spoke on a recent episode of the Timbo Sugar Show.
Some people aren't built for this. Remember when he said that against me? And then I was like, oh, that was mean, man. That was mean. You get injured, injuries happen. I got injured during a fight, and then he says some people aren't built for this. He got injured before the fight, which, you know what? Hopefully it's nothing serious, because that sucks, dude. Mario would have put him on his butt.
It would have been
fun.
I mean, it would
press
have been
conference.
While Garbrandt is out of the fight, he did tweet that he would be looking to return sooner rather than later, giving fans hope that the injury wasn't too serious. Shifting gears to some fight news, we have a change to the Noche UFC card on September 16th. Unfortunately, Chris Curtis is reportedly out of his scheduled fight due to a rib injury. As a result, Roman Kopylov will now compete against Anthony Hernandez in his absence. Kopylov will be looking to build on a recent 3-fight win streak, while Hernandez looks to add to a 4-fight win streak. Reports also surfaced this week that Joshua Van and Kevin Borjas would be throwing down at UFC 295 on November 11th. The fight will see Van look to build on a win over Zhalgas Zhumagulov in his UFC debut back in June, while on the flip side, Borjas will be looking to pick up a win in his promotional debut after earning a contract on Dana White's Contender Series this month. Drop your predictions for these newly reported fights in the comments section down below. Chris Weidman's coach is concerned about UFC return. On Saturday night, former UFC champion Chris Weidman will make his return to the octagon after a horrific leg injury sustained just moments into his UFC 261 bout with Uriah Hall. While many believe that Weidman would retire given that he's just 2-3 in his last 5, the All-American immediately set his sights on a comeback. After a long, grueling journey, the former champ will finally return to action this weekend against fellow veteran Brad Tavares. Heading into the fight, his longtime coach Ray Longo spoke in an interview with CBS Sports, where he admitted that he could not help but feel nervous.
Yeah, I'm a little nervous, but I'm a little nervous about the injury. You know what I mean? Because I think if he fights the fight we want him to fight, we're fine. But he's telling Ariel One he's going to kick the guy as hard as he can, and he might. He's that guy. But I don't know. I'll get over it. But I think I'm a little nervous about the leg. It would kill me if he hurt that leg again. But supposedly it's like a bionic leg now.
The idea of Weidman's shin now being unbreakable is something Conor McGregor has also spoken about with his own leg, comparing himself to the Terminator after having his leg surgically repaired in 2021. With Weidman's return now just a few days away, it's safe to say Longo and many members of the MMA community will all be collectively holding their breath should the former champ decide to open with a thunderous leg kick. And now for our breaking news story of the day. We have Dana White firing 2 fighters from the UFC. James Krause and Ian Heinisch have both been released by the UFC. Krause hasn't fought since 2020, and before that had the whole betting scandal, so him being released doesn't come as a surprise. Ian Heinisch was released as a result of health issues, and he announced he would be taking an indefinite break and informed the UFC of his retirement.
I'm making the decision right now to take a step back, get out of the USADA pool, do some peptides and some other treatments and heal. That's what I'm trying to do right now. So it's tough, but I got to do this right now. I can't keep making my head worse. I know I can't. I've already made it pretty bad.
What do you think of these moves by the UFC? Let us know in the comments below. Top comments. Izzy assumes we're all on board with the idea that Sean is a bad person for speaking honestly. This is not the case. Hilariously, Izzy is too slow to have an opinion on anything. I really wish Sean would use his wrestling against Izzy and make it a real fight, because if he just walks forward, it's gonna be an early night. Ian Gary really thinks he's Conor McGregor. If you want to be featured on our next video, make sure to leave a comment and don't forget to check out yesterday's video in case you missed it.